In the global economic arena, the US economy is consistently outperforming the European Union (EU). This juxtaposition sparks curiosity, raising questions about the factors behind this divergence. As the US economy displays robust growth and resilience, the EU faces some challenges. So let's investigate the underlying causes of the situation while comparing the economic advantages and approaches that the US has over the EU. Comparisons of US and EU economics. Starting with a great comparison between two global economic heavyweights, the European Union and the United States. These two giants have quite the economic journey, full of ups and downs that have shaped their stories. It's like a roller coaster ride of economic trends. So let's talk about the US. They've had some incredible moments of growth that really make them stand out. What's impressive is their ability to create jobs and bring down those pesky unemployment rates when times are good. It's like a superpower they have. And speaking of superpowers, let's get into the trade game. The US, they've got it on lock. Their trade balance is like the talk of the town, sparking all sorts of conversations. Exports and imports are where they really shine, and it keeps their economy humming. Now the EU takes a bit of a different approach. It's like a diverse group of friends that can lead to some interesting dynamics in their trade game. But when they join forces, they show some serious economic muscle on the global stage. And let's not forget the key players in this economic drama, the European Central Bank and the US Federal Reserve. They are in charge of the policies that can make or break their economies. And there is a whole lot to talk about when it comes to the economies and a complete comparison between the US and European Union. GDP growth and performance. Let's take a closer look at the gross domestic product, GDP per person. Think of it as a long-term trend, a journey if you will. Consider this, if any economy grows by 3% every year, it's like a magic doubling spell. In just 24 years, it would double in size. But now let's slow things down a bit. If that growth rate drops to just 1%, the doubling magic takes a whopping 48 years to happen. It's like watching a slow-motion movie of economic progress. Now shifting our focus to the European Union, EU, they've been on a quest to catch up with some of the hipper economies, and guess what? They're not slacking off in terms of economic development. But here's a point to understand. If the EU nations were part of the United States, some folks might actually find themselves a tad less rich. Recent data spills the beans, my friends. The GDP per capita ranking of 14 EU member states, covering nearly 90% of EU GDP, has seen some ups and downs from 2000 to 2023. Let's take France and Germany for example. Back in 2000, they were hanging out in positions similar to the 36th and 31st US states. Fast forward 20 years and France's GDP per capita dropped to the level of the 38th US state, Oklahoma. It even fell behind the 48th lowest US state, Arkansas. Talk about a plot twist. Sure, some Central and Eastern European nations have seen significant GDP per capita growth, but their relatively smaller size and economic challenges can't fully stop Europe's overall economic decline. So here's one more thing. This difference in economic growth rates between the US and EU nations has created quite a gap in GDP per capita. With time, that gap reached a whopping 82%. So what's the bottom line? Well, for Europe to create a robust and prosperous future, they've got to rev up their engines for more muscular economic development. They're facing challenges like climate change, digital transformation, aging populations, and defense obligations, and they need to tackle them head on. Factors driving US outperformance, historical context, and long-term trends. Before the pandemic shuffled, the US has been acing economics for ages. While the EU had its share of ups and downs, the US revived the growth engine. Innovation is key. The US is an innovation party you want to attend. Think Silicon Valley, think Apple, Google, and Amazon. These big names didn't just pop out of thin air. They result from a history that loves new ideas and risks. This culture of innovation gave the US a severe head start. People power and smart moves. Let's discuss the people who make things happen. The US has a knack for getting more done with its workforce. They put in the hours and invest in education and technology. This mix of smarts and hard work gives them a big boost. Funky policies and markets. Here's the lowdown. The US has rules that cheer for new businesses and competition. Plus their financial playground is deep and efficient, which helps companies grow. And they're like quick change artists with their flexible work rules, worldwide vibes, and trade. The US isn't just about the home game. It's got fans worldwide. Businesses from the US reach all corners of the globe, tapping into fantastic opportunities in international markets. Rolling with the punches. The US doesn't throw in the towel when things get rocky. It bounces back with a mix of a strong economy, policies that adjust, and a can-do attitude. And here's the cool part. These are the unique things that make the US perform better than the EU regarding the economy. It's like having superpowers in competition. The US has been using these excellent factors to do better than the EU in the economic race. The dominance of US tech firms in Europe. Now I'd love to talk about the wide world of tech, and it's all about those US tech giants. You know the ones, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. They're not just American superheroes, but global legends, like the rock stars of the tech universe. And guess what? Europe's feeling the tech fever too. These companies are like the trendsetters on the block, changing how we shop, work, and live our lives. They're making megabucks and reshaping the digital world as we know it. But here's the plot twist. They're not just hanging out, but making severe moves in Europe. It's not a coincidence, it's a master plan, and they're taking the driver's seat in the European tech race. They've got their fingerprints everywhere, from cloud computing to online shopping havens. And the best part, it's not just a win for them, it's a jackpot for the US economy. These tech titans aren't just about dollars, but power and influence. They set the trends, influence policies, and dictate how we live our digital lives. And here's more. The US isn't just dominating the tech scene. They're expanding into the world of artificial intelligence, AI, and setting the rules of the game. Europe, it's trying to keep up with this digital revolution, like the tech Olympics, labor force, and productivity dynamics. Let's get to the workforce vibes in the US and the EU. So you know the US, right? This nation has this super cool way of keeping their workforce crazy productive. It's not just about putting in the hours. It's about working smart and making every minute count. They're not afraid to burn the midnight oil if it means getting the job done and making things happen. What's even cooler is that it's not just about grinding away. It's about using those hours to create value, innovate, and keep the economy buzzing. The major role in their success is that the US doesn't rely on luck. Nope, they invest in education and training. Their workforce is very well polished. They've got the skills and they're not afraid to use them. And let's not forget about technology. The US is all about harnessing the power of tech to boost productivity. Automation, data analysis, you name it. They're using these tools to make things smoother and get more bang for their buck. Now, we talk about EU, they've got their pool of talented workers, no doubt about it. They're putting in the hours too, but here's the thing. The results aren't always as dazzling. It's like they're still trying to figure out the magic formula to match the US's productivity style. The US is like the productivity rock stars, while the EU is still finding their groove. Semiconductor industry and economic resilience. Semiconductors are those tiny powerhouses that make our smartphones, smart cars, and more, well, smart. And guess what? Both the US and the EU are players in this amazing game of chips. The US has nailed it when it comes to the talk of these semiconductors. They've got that cutting-edge tech, a flair for creativity, and they're always pushing the boundaries to make the best chips out there. But that doesn't mean that you have to underestimate the EU. They're no pushovers either. They've got their eyes on leveling up their semiconductor game, and they're investing big in research and development. If it comes to the race in producing semiconductors for electronic vehicles, EVs, the US is really ahead of the EU. These chips handle crucial tasks like power distribution and battery management, basically acting as the brains of EVs. Moreover, many EV makers are choosing US-made chips because they're at the top of their game. Meanwhile, the EU is making strides, but they're still finding their groove in the market. If I were to give out performance ratings, the US would be leading the semiconductor race with their innovation and market domination. The EU, on the other hand, is climbing the ladder, and you can see them making progress, but there's still some ground to cover. How the US outperforms the EU in growth. With faster growth and cool innovations, the US is always one step ahead. On the other hand, the EU is taking its time, dealing with things like slower markets and productivity hiccups. So why is the US outpacing the EU? Well, they've got their hands on the proper steps for success, and the EU is working on its version to level up. Change in growth. So what's going on? With respect to Europe's overall economic performance, the various growth rates have played a complicated game. Market dynamics present a challenge since they are slower in Europe than in the US. As a result, businesses find it more challenging to enter or leave the market, which inhibits innovation and enthusiasm. And what's this? Smaller companies aren't growing as quickly as the big players, who aren't facing as much competition. It's like how quickly new ideas catch fire and then burn away. Productivity, the hero of the tale. Let's now discuss productivity. Hold on to your hats because the US has been stealing the show with its employees, being incredibly productive compared to the Euro area. They have figured out how to maximize every working hour. Even while the production of the EU as a whole has increased, there is still a disparity, particularly when comparing the Euro era to the US. Europe's catch-up game. The paradox is that Europe isn't giving up on the race. They're working hard to catch up despite a productivity deficit, with fewer spending in corporate R&D. What's going on? The US is ahead in cutting-edge fields like clean tech, not just in conventional tech. It appears as though the US is setting the beat while Europe is trying to rediscover its beat. So finally, are you fascinated by the US-EU growth showdown? If so, hit that thumbs up and spread the knowledge by sharing this video. Don't miss out on more videos. Subscribe to my channel for engaging content on global economics. And guess what? Your next eye-opening video awaits right here. Stay tuned for more economic exploration.